Hi BookTube, and welcome to a new video. This is my mid-year Freakout tag, which I am recording on the 11th of July. That is after the mid-year, as against the summer solstice, which a lot of booktubers seem to have gone with as their cut-off point. The way I do it is a bit of an amalgam. There's sort of two versions of this tag. There's the Freakout tag and a sort of mid-year review. So I've just culled questions from both. But I always start with my reading stats for the 6 months. So I have completed 76 books in all, of which 7 are non-fiction and 69 are fiction. Of the 69 fiction, 6 are poetry, 2 are short stories. I haven't read any plays, although I do have one I will be getting to in the second half of the year. When I say I read 76 books, I actually read 75. There was one did not finish, but I do include it because I rated it, so it comes into my ratings. And those ratings were 25 5-star reads, 27 4-star reads, 10 3-star reads, 6 2-star reads, and a single 1-star read. I would say those only apply to fiction. I don't include the non-fiction in any of the statistics other than the total books read. Of the 69 fiction, 44 were written by men and 25 were written by women, and 7 were written by LGBTQ plus authors. In terms of geographical spread, 13 were from the UK, 17 were from the US, 41 were from the rest of the world, and that breaks down into 25 from Europe. And then the following: 1 from Taiwan, 2 from the Philippines, well that's the same author with 2 different books, 1 from Hong Kong, 5 from Argentina, 1 from Venezuela, 1 from Chile, 1 from the Ivory Coast, 1 from Canada, 2 from Mexico, and 1 from Japan. So those are my reading stats. Okay, and on to the questions themselves. So the best book you've read so far in 2022, Eleanor Knows by Claudio Pinheiro, translated by Francis Riddell. I have to say that, as I say, I'm recording this on the 11th of July, and I've just finished a book which actually knocks this off its perch. But this is still going to be, I assume, in and around my top 10 reads of the year. Wonderful. And I will post links to the books that I talk about positively here. I probably won't bother if there are any that are negative. So yeah, that up to the end of June was my favourite read of the year so far. The best sequel you've read so far. I don't read sequels. I'm not interested in them. But having said that, turns out Jennifer Egan's new book, The Candy House, is a sort of sequel to A Visit from the Goon Squad. And I hated it. Not because it was a sequel. I just hated it anyway. I couldn't remember any of the characters from Goon Squad, even though I love Goon Squad and it was a 5-star read. It'd been so long ago I read it that I couldn't remember the characters as they were re-envisioned here or given their sequel storylines. But the writing was just so bad, which is shocking because Egan's a very good writer. There was one chapter which was engaging. Anyway, so yeah, I think I gave it 2 stars. The new release you haven't read yet but want to, that is The Interim by Wolfgang Hilbig, a writer from East Germany, and I say East Germany because that's around the time he was writing, and it's translated by Isabel Fargo Cole. I've read 3 Hilbig books, all 5-star, all, it has to be said, quite almost novella-like. You know, that's all 3 of them very thin. This is a bit more chunky, so it'll be interesting to see how I get on with that. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Well, I've got 3 books for that. New novels by Yaroslav Kulfar, who wrote The Spaceman of Bohemia, Anthony Mara, who wrote A Constellation of Vital Phenomena, and the latest Blake Butler novel. But I think the Kulfar book has been put back till next year, so that might not come into this category. I don't know. 5, biggest disappointment. Well, apart from Candy House, and apparently Egan is so immersed in the world of this and Goon Squad that her next book's going to be in the same world. I'm not interested. But apart from that, it was The Public Burning by Robert Coover, which was a buddy read with Fraser. Was it Fraser? No, it was Courtney Ferreter. Sorry. I think I have a problem with Coover. I think he's just too over the top in his satire to the point of it being concussive. It's not subtle. There's some great bits of writing in it. And if he could have narrowed down a 450-page book into a 200-page and just kept the good bits, it might even have been a 5-star read. But it was just so much stuff that one had to sort of churn through to get to the good stuff. So yeah, that was really disappointing and not as radical as I'd sort of been led to believe. 6, bigger surprise. Well, apart from Elena Knows, because I really wasn't expecting anything from it, and it was just so beautifully written. It's probably this. His Name Was Death by Mexican writer Rafael Bernal, translated by Kit Schluter. So I did a discussion video about anthropomorphic literature based on the novel Pod, which was released this year, which is set in the oceans around a couple of different pods of dolphins. And I felt that the book failed, and that it's really hard to do anthropomorphic lit for similar reasons that it's hard to have child narrators in serious literary fiction because of the language involved. And a commentator on that video said, "Have you tried this?" And I'd read a previous Rafael Bernal book before called The Mongolian Conspiracy and loved it, and it's great. And I don't know why I didn't sort of follow up to see what else he'd written. But anyway, so I took up this commentator's suggestion without realising it was the Rafael Bernal who'd written The Mongolian Conspiracy. Anyway, so this is an anthropomorphic lit book about a guy in the Amazon jungle who discovers the language of mosquitoes. And it's brilliant. It's so good. It is about sort of political systems of organisation and the difference between stultifying systems and systems that allow for growth and development and progress. Superb. And a pleasant surprise, because it sort of disarmed my own argument about how you can't write anthropomorphic literature. Favourite new author, debut or new to me? Well, there are 2. The aforementioned Wolfgang Hilbig. So these 3 books of his I have read: The Tidings of the Trees, Old Rendering Plant, and The Females, all set in communist East Germany, all 5-star, brilliantly envisioned, really, a representation of the world under sort of Soviet proxy rule. And just he comes up with sort of these metaphors and images that are just brilliant. They just absolutely open your mind out to what he's getting at. And the other one is the Philippine author Gina Apostol. Insurrecto, which is a 5-star read, was my first 5-star read of the year, and Bibliolepsy, which I didn't enjoy quite as much, but Apostol has a really scabrous turn of phrase. When she wants to put the boot into something, she does it brilliantly. So I'm very keen to read more of her work. 8, newest fictional crush, don't have one. 9, newest favourite character, don't have one. I don't remember books because of their characters. I remember it for lots of different things, but not characters. 10, book that made you cry. I don't cry, but a book that moved me very much was Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, a debut novel by I think a 24-year-old British author, Maddie Mortimer. This was superb. It's about a woman with cancer. It's not, but it's life affirming as well as very realistic about the failings of the body, and I thought she sort of pulled off that balance, supremely well. And for a 24-year-old debut author, I thought showed such maturity and such control, really. So that was excellent. 11, a book that made you happy. Well, there've been quite a few. The first one is this non-fiction, Fair Forward, Letters from David Markson by Laura Sims. Laura Sims is a American poet, but she was a fangirl of David Markson while he was still alive in the first decade of the 2000s, and started correspondence with him. And this is all the letters that he sent back to her. And it just made me very happy because I love David Markson. I'm very sad that he's not around with us, and this was a bit of an injection of a bit more Marksonian spirit or whatever. So that made me very happy. And the other was a book called Tomb Guardians by Paul Griffiths, which is a book about a novel about a triptych, which was part of a quadric or whatever the full version is called, of a religious scene about Christ, of the guards who were stationed outside where his tomb, Christ's tomb, and obviously when they roll the rock back the next day and Christ has disappeared, Christ has risen and ascended. And it's a brilliant take on as a mixture of imagining how these guys react to, that they're basically going to be held responsible for sort of dereliction of duty, falling asleep on the job, but also a consideration of the painting, which was painted, I think, in the 15th century or the 16th century in Germany, and what that says about the times. It's a biblical scene from before, from BC or AD or however it's measured. But this is very much, the painting very much portrays and reveals what's going on in the 15th, 16th century Germany, which of course was rent asunder by religious strife. I had no expectations of that book at all. I'm not interested in history of religion. I am interested in art critique, but not of religious art. It holds no interest in me. And yet this book was absolutely winning, held me in awe. It was an absolute delight. 12. Most beautiful book you bought so far this year. Okay. I don't normally go big on cover art. It doesn't interest me that much. But this is another David Markson book. He wrote 2 books in the 70s before he sort of took his work in a whole radical direction in the 90s and 2000s. This is called Springer's Progress. I haven't actually read it yet, but what a wonderful cover that is, I feel. I love it. 13. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, when I sort of put these questions together from the 2 different versions of the tag, the only answer I had for this was mine. I need to finish writing my book by the end of July. And again, we are Monday the 11th of July, and I finished it yesterday. It's complete, which is very pleasing, obviously ahead of schedule, or my schedule. It's not an external schedule. So I'm just taking a mental break this week. I go back to work from my leave for writing this after today. So I'm going to have a whole load of work waiting for me. Once I've sort of cleared the decks of that and got a bit of breathing space, I will then, move on to the next stage with the novel, which is how to secure a deal for it and to think about how, marketing and all that sort of stuff. I have started the marketing. I've shot a couple of rough videos, but it's finished. So given that that's no longer the answer, there's quite a few. They're all books I've started, not this year, but previous years, including The Tunnel by William H. Gass. And I think I'm halfway through this. Where's the bookmark? 375 out of 650. No, I'm actually over halfway, which is good. But it's one of the densest books I've ever read. It's slow going. I need to get back and finish James Joyce's Ulysses. Again, I haven't picked that up this year. And there are others. There's the 3 novels by Samuel Beckett, Malloy, which I've read, Malone Dies, which I'm halfway through, and The Unnameable, which I haven't started. So there's plenty of books like that. As I say, none started this year, but I really need to finish them. 14. What's a book you started reading this year and still need to complete? I think the only book I've got outstanding that I started this year is this one, Already Dead by Dennis Johnson. I'm halfway through it. I put it down because there are lots of shiny new baubles. I will get back to it, but it's pretty bog standard Dennis Johnson. So yeah, it's not driving me to pick it up. Sorry, on the favourite new authors to me, I'd said Apostel and Hilbig. I forgot to mention Georgi Gospodinov, the Bulgarian writer. Both of these are 5 stars for me. I start off with the physics of sorrow, but I actually think natural novel is even better. He hasn't written a whole hell of a lot. He's a contemporary writer, so at the moment I'm not sure there's a huge more amount for me to catch up with, but I definitely like both of those. And finally, what is your next big priority for your reading? Okay, so this takes a little bit of explanation. I don't read genre work. I suppose the only exception to that is I do read sci-fi, but I'm not a classical sci-fi head in that I've read Asimov and Philip K. Dick. I haven't read the classics, as it were. But every so often I see a book, a sci-fi title, read the blurb, sounds interesting, I pick it up. A lot of them are in this Masterworks series. But I feel that I have to be in the mood to read sci-fi. And apart from Rhiannon Hughes's XX and The Membranes, which I read this year, which was both of those are 5 stars. XX I read last year. I haven't really felt a compunction to pick up sci-fi, but I've been picking enough of these up over the last few years that I actually feel I'd like to take a big chunk out of them. So I would like between now and the end of the year to devote a month to reading most, if not all, of these. So if there are any people well acquainted with sci-fi, if you can give me a clue as to which you recommend to, what order, which are the ones I should start with, which are the ones I should leave to the end. So I've got Alfred Bester, The Demolished Man. I've got Greg Bear, Blood Music. I've got Olaf Stapledon, Star Maker. Now, I have read Olaf Stapledon, First and Last Man, which is a brilliant book. I love it. I even took it to, I had it as one of my 3 titles for the library at the end of the apocalypse on a radio show I did a few years ago. The problem is his style's a bit dense. It's a bit old-fashioned. It's almost Victorian in style, which has always put me off picking this one up. But I'm told this is even better. So while this would be near the top of my sci-fi pile, I don't think I want to start with it. I think I need to be eased into it. A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller. And then a couple of Christopher Priest books. I've read Christopher Priest before. He's very good. The Glamour and The Separation. And one which I'm not considering for reading this year, but I think next year I will read throughout the course of the 12 months because it's a 1,000-page tome. Neil Stevenson, Anathem. I'm not going to read it this year. As I say, I think I will just have it as an ongoing read next year. So if you could give me any advice on sort of priorities within that little lot, I'd be very grateful. So there you have it, BookTube. Thank you very much. That was my mid-year Freakout come review tag. It's been a pretty good 6 months. I've had more disappointing reads at this stage than I did last year. I mean, last year I had so few. As I say, I even had a 1-star read this year. A book that I unhauled singularly on its own because I managed to find a community library. Those sort of box things on the street, and you take a book out and replace it with one you want to get rid of. It was so bad I was desperate to get it out of my house. So it's been a good year. It's been a fantastic start to the second half of the year. As I say, I've read my favourite book to date, more of which will be in my next wrap-up review. So here's to some more good reading. And also, now that my book is finished, for the last 2 months, I haven't been able to read nearly as much because I've been concentrating on editing my own work. That's done, at least until I land a publishing deal for it. So I feel sort of that I have more time to read now than I've had recently. Okay, so till next time, thanks very much.